Hello friends, it's your buddy Nick here with Game with the Guys. We are joining Spelldexia here in the Irithyll dungeon in Dark Souls 3. And you'll recall many moons ago we came by these interesting artifacts. These guys bleed, which is very interesting. And we found, hopefully it is still in my inventory, the Dragon Torso Stone. And that was a hint that we should come back here and use a new interesting, and I'm going the opposite direction, this gesture that we recently got after we fought Osiris. And this is the Path of the Dragon. And we'll notice that the other guys are doing the same gesture. And so this area has a bit of mystery to it, and you can see it off in the distance that it is a physical place. And so here are we meditating, and just kind of our spirit is being taken there. And if we watch real closely here, the head slumps. And then so as I was saying there, you hear the sound of a squawking, maybe a drake or a wyvern, a dragon of some kind, taking us across perhaps? Or are we here on a purely meditative level? Are we just here really our psyche or our spirit? Or were we really physically transported here? And I just remembered that I forgot to look up what this is called precisely, but you'll see that there are many of these little stacked rock formations here. And this is actually something we kind of saw a similar thing in Bloodborne in the DLC with the clamshells. We saw clamshells stacked up in an area, so they wanted to show off the look of that effect again, I suppose. And so this area we see these, and you can get a really good look at his face there. But we have its head is basically that of a cobra or a rattlesnake, a venomous serpent, and we'll be looking at a lot of serpent and dragon themed things in this area because they are all very important here. And the strategy that I like to take here is basically kill everything and then pick up the goods. Most of these guys will attack very quickly, and you can... as you see, it's best to fight one at a time, lest you get destroyed. Here we go. So in this area, what you're going to want to do is do your best to take these guys on one at a time. If you can bait them out so you can fight just one at a time, that's going to be your best bet. Unfortunately, that guy doesn't want to move forward, but we know that his friend is hiding right back here, and we can get an attack in on him. So now we've taken out a lot of these guys, and we took a look at their little head there and their little bodies and stuff. And a lot of the placement of the items in this area are basically to draw you out for attack. And so we're going to go back and get some of the items there. There's a lot of crafting materials overall in this place, and you know, a lot of this and that. We'll find a lot of lightning-based items, and we'll see one right around the corner here, but there will be especially a lot of crafting materials. And this place is an optional area, so if you come here, you are heavily rewarded with especially Titanite chunks. You'll get lots of scales. There's twinkling Titanite here, right up here. This, I believe, is a lightning gem. And it makes sense for there to be a lot of lightning-based things here, because there are people that are likely, if they are antagonists to the dragons, they would arm themselves with lightning-based items in order to combat the dragons. So we find a lot of that here. And what I like to do oftentimes is look at the literal Japanese translation of an area. This is called Archdragon's Peak, so not terribly different from what we see the English version. But there are little minor differences. And there we see the moon, which is kind of interesting because it's not a crescent shape like we saw from Irithyll. When from Irithyll we looked out and we could see Archdragon Peak and also the crescent moon. But here it is, I don't remember if it's waxing or waning, whatever the term is, that it's mostly, it's on the way to becoming full, but it is not completely full. Or maybe it is going away from being full and is not, not a new moon and not a full moon, but somewhere in between. Anyway, as we come around here, once again, there are items scattered about, and a lot of times they are set up in places, hopefully, that you will get yourself into trouble. And as per usual, when I come through areas, especially with Speldexia, she tends to be a little bit more stealthy. Oh. Whoop. And this guy, oh, I had run out of stamina and fell. That fall actually might have saved me, because you saw how slowly I got up there. I mean, he might have come over and chopped me with his axe before I got the chance to get up. And yeah, these big ones here, they can be problematic, and it's best to really kind of treat them like a mini-boss, in that you will really wait for their attacks and then attack when you get the chance. You can really treat any enemy like that, but you know, a lot of these guys, they're a lot weaker, like this fella here, and you just come up, backstab. But those bigger ones, yeah, they can be a problem. They have a lot more hit points, they hit a lot harder, but their attacks are a lot more predictable. So fight accordingly. Here we have the Lightning Clutch Ring, and we've found several other Clutch Rings before, and you'll notice that they have very similar explanations here. The second part about the old fable in Londor is exactly the same, but you'll see that this, well, I don't have any lightning-based damage to show you, but it's going to increase your lightning damage, but decrease all the other damage absorption. And as we come over here, there's a very, very interesting item up on top of this ledge. And for those of you that play Demon Souls, will remember an item that was very, very similar to this. So let's take a look at this guy here, the Ancient Dragon Great Shield. So if you've played Demon Souls, you'll remember that this looks almost exactly like the Adjudicator shield. And it's a very similar shape, and they were both kind of a faded, painted look, and they both regenerated health. So if we look at this, it says it's a wooden shield bearing the image of an ancient dragon. Very slowly regenerates hit points, and that's 2 hit points per second. The painting is the result of an exquisite but painstaking technique. Lingering, undying traces of the ancient dragons can still be seen in their descendants, the man-serpents, though they have fallen far from grace. And this is kind of reminds me of the description. If we look at, oops, I didn't want to click that button, I wanted this button. And if we look at the description here, it says depicting a snake that could have been but never was a dragon. And so these covetous rings, they talk about how a serpent could have been but never was a dragon, and the enemies in this area are very, well, I mean, they've got snake heads for sure. They're very serpentine, as I see that fella's head up there. So they could have been, but never were dragons. Now, is that saying that in this area we will find a lot of evidence of people following the path of the dragon? Is that saying that perhaps these serpent men were also attempting to follow the path of the dragon, but never never quite made it there. We'll see a lot of human bodies. We'll see a lot of kind of dragon human bodies, and we'll talk more about that later. But we pulled the lever, the portcullis comes up, and I've been reading books lately, and it's very surprising that there's no murder holes up here. But anyway, if you know what a murder hole is. So we'll see in this area, as we're about to fight a boss here, the statue of the Lord of the region, the Nameless King. And we'll run right by this boss, because this is, in a sense, it's a puzzle boss. And we'll see this guy's got an adjudicator shield, but I want to pull that up. Oh, I only had it for just a second in order to keep from just getting crushed by everyone. There are a lot of developer messages in the area, and they basically tell you how to defeat the boss. But what they don't really talk about is the best thing to do here is really just run by everything. You can spend your time trying to fight all these guys and get through, as there'll be a snake head popping up. Oh, he was too far off the screen. But the Ancient Wyvern will the whole time be attempting to shoot us down with flames, and you saw the flames there. And if you take the time to just try to kill all these guys, and he's going to shoot right this way. So you're not safe up here, but as we go around, we'll get into places where we can attack him. And I think that flame just kind of looks dumb. Just these little balls of flame. Now you can come back to this area later, but I like to do this now just because we're here and this is kind of just out of the way. I like to come over and you grab the Twinkling Titanite. And we've really skipped over a lot of this area right now, but we're going to come back and look at this in greater detail when it's a little safer. So we see here weakness, head, and then this will say plunging attack. And we will see that the best way to beat this guy is, in fact, with one strike, a plunging attack. And the boss is vanquished. You can fight him down on the ground, and there's another way to fight him too. But we get the Dragon Head Stone, and then we get this little cutscene here, as we are whisked away to a faraway land once again. Well, I mean, we're whisked away about 100 feet, to be honest. So, we collected the Dragon Head Stone, and I will demonstrate that later on after we get through this area. The first half of the area here. We're technically done with the first boss of this area, but I want to go back, and there's lots of items that we ran right past. So we have a lot more to explore, really. And the next room over is actually really, really interesting. But we're going to go back to the beginning, and we're going to take a look at the Dragon Head Stone here. A stone imbued with the power of the everlasting dragons, used in a secret rite by dragon worshippers. And we've talked a little bit about that before, and we will continue to talk about dragon worship. Gain the head of a dragon and emit dragon breath, a transformation that is irreversible until death. Those who choose the path of the dragon strive for perfect imitation, and the Dragon Head Rite is the first step in this grand process. So we're actually, if you look straight through there, we ran right by that door to go up the ladder. So we can get right back out there right now, but actually what I want to do is kind of go through the area in detail from where we started. So we're going to just go back to this previous bonfire. So here we are at Archdragon Peak, and one thing, oh, you see the sun there, and the moon there. One thing that I wish I would have pointed out coming up here is just the design of the area, and how when you're walking into a level, a lot of times you just really get a great view of the layout, of the scenery, of just everything that's going on. And so we come up here, and the first thing we see is the statues here that we discussed a little bit. This is the Nameless King, and he is the grand boss of the area. And there's another statue up above my head there, a drake of some kind. But you'll notice this guy has a particularly interesting weapon, and we'll get up close and personal to that. And he has a crown that is very much like that of Gwyn's, and we'll see more about that when we fight the guy. So once again, there are the developer messages here, and they give you hints on how to fight the dragon. Plunging attack. And so when you first walk up to that, by then the dragon is probably about to come down, and you kind of have to look around, well, where can I possibly plunge from? And it was right back there, above my head there, where we actually did all the plunging. And we see an item there. I meant to say we see a bell here, and we'll see more bells in this area. And it makes me wonder if there are any ties to the Bell of Awakening back in the Untended Graves or at Firelink, but hard to say. Hard to say. And we find dung pie here, and usually when you find an item like that, that's a hint. And I mean, it is a hint. You can poison and do toxic buildup on the enemies in this area, but it's it's kind of worthless. So while we do get the hint that you can use toxic attacks on these guys, just fight them. Just fight them. And here we found an item that I'm actually going to put on called the Ring of Steel Protection. And this will increase your physical damage absorption. And if we look here, you can't really see what it does. Actually is increase your absorption by 10%, but a lot of the items have diminishing returns. If you have, say, 15 or higher, it starts dropping off. So if I were to actually take off all of my armor, which I will do now, we can see that this will give you 10% absorption on your damage there. And let me just go ahead and put everything back on, and we'll take a look at the description here. This is the Ring of the Night King of an Ancient Land. And if we look back at Dark Souls 1, we know this belonged to Night King Rendell. The Night King was said to be lined with steel on the inside, such that even talons of mighty dragons did him little harm. And legend has it that Rendell actually stood down a giant drake and slashed it to pieces. So it's a fitting name for a powerful king that stood up to the dragons, and if their talons couldn't penetrate his skin, that would give him a lot of help in slashing down a giant dragon. And I really like the architecture in this area. It's all destroyed and whatnot, but you see it's very distinct looking. It's kind of like maybe an ancient Roman or Greek or something like that. And yeah, these. Let me see if I can just come on. These guys with the great shield, they just give me so much more trouble than as he comes up and tries to whack at me there. Come on. And I do that way, and it's really just because generally you can kick down a shield, but with these curved swords, that's the kicking attack. So it's not as useful against guys with great shields of any kind like that. And we'll come through the area, and I mentioned before, a lot of lightning-based items. There's going to be a lot of the crafting materials. Oh, and that guy just... Whoa! Oops, I meant to actually use a regular Estus. Oh. And I'm just having trouble with these guys. I'm very rusty. Oh, jeez. Oh, my goodness. A lot of these guys actually drop crafting materials too. So let's see if we can just get one to come out at a time. But they're both coming. Of course they are. And they have quick attacks. And as I said, I'm quite rusty in this fighting style. While I've been playing a bit of Dark Souls, I have not been using a Spelldexia type character. I've been doing a lot of sword and board. So yeah, this fighting style is... When I was first started this playthrough, I was very I was very used to it. I was using it a lot, and so now I've actually gone away from it, and sometimes I'll just run right into fireballs. So these guys, it's probably best to allow them to attack and just jump behind them, and then counter like that. And right over here we will have a very obnoxious little worthless area. But Twinkling Titanite. And we've got this guy over here raising his hand. Don't forget me! I'm holding a chunk! And we'll come back through here. And I don't know if you saw it when we came through before. There's actually a couple of guys that dropped down, and best to take care of them very quickly. They have all sorts of ninja-esque attacks, and they use, a lot of them use the two daggers like that. You'll have the interesting big, it almost... I thought the one had it. We'll see one up here that has it, I'm sure. For you Game of Thrones fans, it looks like an Arak, like there he has right there. I believe is what it's called. But a lot of times you can get behind him and do a little backstabbing, but let's see. Sometimes these guys will actually drop this sword, and oh, there it is, the Man Serpent Hatchet. And it's interesting that it's called a hatchet because it is actually, if you look there, the weapon type is an axe. And you see here, it has a unique broadly curved blade that can sneak past shields. So, an interesting weapon. And as we come through here, there's another one of these big guys up on top. And there are ambushes aplenty, but if we wait for his attacks and counter, these guys can actually be a little bit staggered, and you can get some quicker, easier hits on them. And the big ones always drop crafting material. They can drop large shards or also chunks. And this guy wasn't paying attention, so I come up and I get an easy kill on him. And his friend here is also not paying attention, so an easy kill on them. And across the way there's a sniper waiting to get us. There are a few items up here. Oh, and I just love the lighting effect and the sound that this spell makes. Some chunks here. So if you've got some items that you're trying to upgrade, please do make it to Archdragon Peak. Some lightning bolts, more lightning-based items. So these guys are defending the area, and it's highly likely that they, you know, that dragon hunters of various kinds or whatnot have been coming through here attempting to rid this place of the dragons, and we'll find a very famous dragon antagonist later on. Oh. Oh, and he got me nonetheless. And we've got a big guy there. This guy, these guys are the worst. He's holding a battle axe, but it's on a chain, so he actually has quite the range with it. He can go close or he can go far with it. He's a very obnoxious opponent. Oh, I was trying not to get hit there, but... Oh, and goodbye. Fell to his death there. And we came up this way. You can kind of see all the area down below. There's the ledge where we jumped off and did the plunging attack to kill the drake. And here we have another great shield guy, and you'll see that doesn't do a lot when I try to fight him like that. It's best to either, you know, if you can knock their shield out of the way, or, you know, he's just following me. Luckily, he took a swipe at me so I could get behind him. Now, straight across through there is where the bonfire is, and I want to go ahead and max that out. We'll notice that there are some stairs here to the left. We're going to make a beeline for those stairs, and we'll face a new enemy, and you'll hear this chime that happens there, and the sound of a summon. And here we have a very interesting looking, it still has the head of a snake, but you'll see it's wearing almost like a walker, but it's head of a snake. It's very much like a hooded cobra, and he actually summons this knight who can be very easily spammed with L1s if you're using a twin weapon like that, and he drops the Drakeblood sword. And that is a Drakeblood knight that we're introduced to in Dark Souls 2, but I wanted to talk a little bit more about the mage type guy that we saw. And for those of you that have played Dark Souls 1, when you're in Sen's Fortress, there are two types of man-serpents. One of them, they kind of have just the regular snakehead, and then there's the ones that have kind of more like the cobra hooded snakehead type. They have multiple arms, and those guys are actually the magic users. So this is kind of a... I don't know that this is supposed to be the Dark Souls 3 version of those exact same guys, but the type of enemies, they're kind of mirroring those other enemies there. So let's take a look at the sword that we just found, this Drakeblood Greatsword. So a greatsword wielded by an order of knights who venerate dragon blood. This sword is a blade. Its blade engraved with script symbolizing dragon blood inflicts magic and lightning damage, and we'll see here that it does lightning, magic, and physical damage. It does 3 magic types. So if you actually imbue it with, say, a chaos or a dark gem, it will do 4. It'll do 4 damage types, which is kind of crazy. And so this is what belonged to the Drakeblood Knights that we fought. I talked about them after we fought Osiris, but they were found in the first DLC from Dark Souls 2. And they worshipped the blood of the dragon as a means of kind of ascension. And so we find a fellow of that nature here. And all throughout this area, we see these dragonoid humans, and we'll get a better look at that a little bit later. But down here is something particularly interesting, and this is an ancient dragon. And if we right here do the Path of the Dragon gesture, we will be rewarded with a ring, the Calamity Ring. And once again, this is a throwback to Dark Souls 1. The calamitous dragon himself, as it mentions here, a ring made from the orange eye of a calamitous dragon. His name was Calamite. And so with this, you receive double damage. This ring has no useful powers. It is merely a symbol of dragon worship, a thing quietly passed down amongst its most fervent adherents, some of whom become convinced the task has been bestowed upon them as a sacred duty. So if you really want to follow the path of the dragon, you have to wear this ring. And I'm going to go ahead and take off these items here, and we're going to take a look at this. And you'll see there that normally the damage absorption, 0. No extra damage, no penalty on damage. But here, 100% extra damage given. So double damage there. That is basically, if there was a Dark Souls hard mode, it is wearing the Calamity Ring. Taking the double damage is pretty brutal. And you'll see, okay, right here there's several of these plates. And you'll see these all over this room. Does this symbol look similar to anything that we've seen before? Does that look familiar at all? And so it just really makes me wonder about our good friend Solaire. And he may have seen this symbol somehow, some way. And is that basically the origin of the Sunbro symbol? Oh, and almost killed by this guy. Oh, geez. It's hard to do L1 attacks when you're not wearing, when you don't have your hand double sorted out like that. And that was an interesting type of crystal lizard, but I was trying to see if he fell down below, but couldn't see him there. More Titanite scales. Those giant crystal lizards, they're very sturdy, and they like to knock you off of paths and send you falling to your death. So be careful when you face those guys. Here we have the elevator. This, I didn't point it out when I was down below here, but this will take us down to the first section. A little bit of a shortcut, but kind of worthless, because there's a bonfire right up there, and then as we come up here, there's a bonfire up here. So pretty much a worthless shortcut. And something died and gave me a few extra souls, but, you know, thanks, I guess. And we'll come through here and we see a lot of the candles and a lot of these people in meditation, and we see an item right there that is just asking for death. I might be better off fighting these guys sword and board style, because they'll bounce off pretty much any shield that you have. Where's your friend? You don't come out here alone. There he goes. You can just get a really good look at that serpentine head. And it's a Titanite scale. Usually, you know, I talked about this before, but usually when there's an item that's really just aiming for you to get killed like that, it's generally an ember or just some really awful souls. Some really low-rent, crappy souls. So yeah, this plate, though, I just think that's so interesting. If Solaire somehow, you know, the whole of the Sunbros is they're followers of Gwyn's firstborn, the Nameless King. And so, I mean, what came first? The Sunbro symbol or this plate that just, I mean, they litter the floor here. I don't think that Solaire followed the path of the dragon in any way, but or it might have been a symbol that was Gwyn Jr., as I like to call him, that was his symbol that has been interpreted different ways. But let's go ahead, and we've got some more interesting stuff to look at that's not here on Archdragon Peak, but in fact back here behind Osiris. So here behind the consumed King's Garden, I'm having difficulty speaking today. Just all too fitting that I mess up while saying that phrase. And we see these same enemies. We were introduced to them when we first came through here, and now they are our regular foes. And where we found the gesture for the Path of the Dragon, we find this fellow here, holding the Drake Blood armor. And I believe he's wearing it. I think this armor is actually really cool looking. It's quite intricate. It's really pretty. And if I kind of go back through here, you can see the how strong the defense is for that. And I think it's a mighty fine looking armor. And notice the tiny cape there with the dragon on it. And a little ridge. If I can actually get close, we can take a closer look at the ridge on top here. And it's just, just a lot of detail, intricacies, a lot of design to it. Just a really cool looking plate mail set. And now let's go ahead and take a look at the description. Armor of the Drakeblood Knights, worshippers of the blood of dragons, as we mentioned before. The red cloth is said to symbolize their yearning for blood. The dragon worship has captured the hearts and minds of warriors across the lands for many ages. We saw this all the way back in Dark Souls 1 and Dark Souls 2. Perhaps such warriors are attracted to doctrines of few words. And, maybe that's a reference to the fact that you meditate in order to follow the path of the dragon. You don't have to say anything. You don't have to be the brightest of bulbs, I guess, in order to have an introspective meditative look. And so yeah, just a really cool armor set that is very fitting for what's going on and quite heavy, much heavier than what Speldexia can normally wear. So let's go ahead and put on her. Yeah, this is what I was wearing before. Okay. And what I wanted to do now is actually take another look at these items here. And you'll notice that I can't use them the way that I am situated now. And I can use the head. And so there I have a little dragon head there. And I don't know if I take off this other armor if it'll allow me to use the rest. There we go here. And now you can take the form of this dragon. And this is very much the look of the other dragon men that we saw in the area. And now these items have a different use. But if we come back in here, we can see I'm not wearing any armor. So my defense is very low. And my absorption also fairly low. So wearing this dragon, wearing the dragon suit, you're a bit naked. So now we can take a look at what these things actually do. The headstone here, if you just tap it like that, you get just a little bit of fire. But if you hold it down, yeah, and you'll see my stamina going down. This doesn't cost focus points. It is purely based on your stamina. And so you can see there, woohoo! A lot of fire if you have a lot of stamina. And the torso here, you'll see you get a buff there. And my attack power up at 377 and down to 342. So it's very similar to what some of the weapons that have kind of like a weapon buff like that. It does a very similar thing. I think it actually also does a little bit of knockback. We'll see if we can demonstrate that. Actually, let's go back to Firelink because I'm gonna end up doing some upgrades. So you can see there, It does some knockback, kind of like force. And we can... I'm not on the same level as these guys, so I was missing them, but, you know, you get a little dragon breath. That's kind of fun, and that guy bounces around there. But, you know, you got to see a little bit how that works, and we're going to find improved versions of these stones as we travel further into Archdragon Peak. Got a couple of bolts in my gut there. So that's going to do it for this first section of Archdragon Peak. I'm going to talk a little bit about some news, but first I wanted to thank you for watching. If you're enjoying these playthroughs, if you learned something new in this video, hit that like button. If you have any disagreements with my speaking of the lore, or if you've got things to add, I love seeing that stuff in the comments below, so go ahead and add that in. If you've got friends that you think are going to like this this channel, this playthrough, please share that with them, because it's fun. The more people that are talking about this stuff, you know, the more fun it is. And yeah, if you're not subscribing, please do subscribe. My my video output is not what it used to be now that I'm a new dad, so I don't really get the same amount of time to make new videos. So if you subscribe, you'll get a better... You'll get notified when a new video comes out, rather than just expecting to see them very regularly like they used to be. But so yeah, other news. I am recording this on the 3rd day of February. When I will post this, I don't know. I think that I'll probably finish my recordings and then post the conclusion of this playthrough. All right, I am just going far off track. And just once again, thanks for watching, and we will see you next time.